Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Addison Lemons. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the Assistant Director of Student Organizations in the Office of Student Life. And today I'm going to be talking to you all about leading with empathy. This is a great presentation, whether you are a member of a student organization, you are preparing to graduate, you're taking on a job or an internship, or you're just really looking to hone in on some leadership skills, and empathy sounds like something interesting to you. So with that, I am going to share my screen and share a little presentation we have. This is something that you can listen to as an individual, as a group, wherever you feel most comfortable. So let us get started. So as I mentioned, today we are going to be talking about leading with empathy. And I really want you to think about kind of your preconceived notions about what you think about empathy versus sympathy and kindness, and maybe kind of release all those preconceived notions as you come into this presentation today. So think for a second. What do you think of when you hear kindness or empathy? Is it giving up your seat on a bus, maybe helping someone cross the street, holding something simple like holding the door for someone? Maybe you see a street performer and you give them a few dollars, things like that. Is that kindness? Is that empathy? Is it listening to your friend when they tell you they've had a bad day or they're going through a breakup? Is it calling one of your grandparents and just having a simple conversation? Here's a quote. I wanted to share a quote about kindness and empathy that I really resonated with, and that's kindness and empathy relate to a leader's ability to control their impulses and take a genuine interest in and truly understand what their team members and what makes each person unique. So, what is empathy? We've talked about it for a minute. Let's dive deep. Empathy is the ability to comprehend and share the feelings of other people with kindness and intelligence, resulting in healthier communication. The ability to feel and understand the emotions of other people, it requires putting yourself in another person's position and trying to understand their experience and reacting with concern or compassion. One kind of visualization that I like to think about is, maybe someone falls and breaks their leg. Maybe sympathy might be like, well, I'm really sorry that happened to you. But empathy is, wow, I really appreciate how tough this must be. I know this is going to be make getting to classes harder. This is going to make getting to work harder. Maybe you can't drive now. This is going to really put you in a unique and tough situation that you haven't had to deal with before. And I'm really sorry about that. And I really want to help. Versus, again, just maybe sympathy is, while important, might just be more like, wow, I'm really sorry that happened. That's a bummer, right? So, something to think about. And again, today we're really thinking about it, what it means to be an empathetic leader. A leader can mean a lot of things. As you probably know, if you've watched any of these other leadership workshops, leadership takes on a lot of forms. So again, I want you to think about during this presentation what role you might be. Are you managing other folks at a job? Are you serving as an officer in a student club or org? Are you just working and taking the lead on a group project? Whatever leadership looks like to you and whatever that leadership position might be for you, I want you to kind of frame yourself in that mindset as you think about empathetic leadership. So let's kind of dive into that and think about what does leading with empathy really look like. Apologies, I'm just moving my camera. There we go. So empathetic leadership is really having the ability to emotionally understand other folks and be aware of things that might be going through. Has anybody ever worked in a job maybe and you're like, you come to work and you're having a bad day and it's just a really tough and personal situation going on, and one of your other coworkers or your manager or your boss is just blissfully unaware and they're like, "Hey Addison, I see you're being a little slow." And instead of saying, "Is there something going on? Or is there something I can help you with?" Maybe talk to me about why your performance isn't at its normal level. Instead, a boss might sometimes be like, "Hey, you're being a little slow. Let's pick up the pace, all right? We've got a lot going on. Maybe you work at a big restaurant. We've got a lot of orders to fill." But an empathetic boss might be like, "Talk to me about what you're feeling right now that might lead to these behaviors." And demonstrating empathy at work doesn't have to be just something you do as a leader, as a manager of a team. It can be with your coworkers as well. When you meet someone that kind of demonstrate this, what they're really showing is that they have really strong emotional intelligence. You probably heard the term emotional intelligence a lot. It's a very common term these days. Again, it kind of similar to empathy. It's really about being tuned in to others' feelings and being aware of what other folks might be going through. Empathetic leaders are also just generally more effective leaders. I think there's a lot of studies out there that show leadership effectiveness is directly tied to empathy. The best bosses are not the ones that say go, go, go and just bark orders around, but really seek to understand their team and have those conversations and have those a better understanding of kind of what makes their team tick. Empathetic leadership also looks like really positive communication. Focus on building relationships, not treating your team members, your coworkers, your club members as just another cog in the machine, another person to get things done, but really as individual, unique people that have different needs, have different strengths, have different weaknesses, are going to have good days, are going to have bad days. And I think an empathetic leader is really one that can navigate those interpersonal dynamics. An example, let's say you're the club president. Conflict comes up in your club. Empathetic leadership really looks like being able to hear both sides of that conflict, even if it really seems like a one-sided conflict or one person might be way more right than the other, still being able to take a little bit of that other side of the coin and saying, okay, I can see why that person believes they are right, even if I don't think they're right. So as a leader, I'm going to step in, I'm going to have these mediation conversations, and I'm going to get to the bottom of how we can bring these folks back together and get them both to a level that they're satisfied at. So, again, what are some characteristics of empathetic leadership? One, I think, would be really fostering that sense of purpose or community. Again, thinking about it, maybe it's a club, maybe it's a job. You can work at some entry level. Maybe it's a retail job. You work at Gap or Old Navy. Maybe it's you work at McDonald's. Sometimes there's a misconception about these are just jobs to make money, and there's really no point behind them, and you're just kind of going to work, getting paid, doing your job, and going home. That doesn't always have to be the case. It truly, I worked in as a valet one time, and I valeted cars. Seems like a basic. You're just doing a service, and you're just providing a service, and you're getting paid, right? But we had an incredible supervisor and a manager of that team that really kind of showed the purpose, and it was valeting cars at a hotel, and they were explaining to us, you are the first people these folks might interact with during their stay at this hotel. And you are creating that first impression that's going to last through their visit and through their stay. And we really want our guests to have a positive experience. And they work really hard to come to this nice hotel. So think about that as you are valeting your car, as you're welcoming in them, saying, welcome, Mr. Lemons. Thank you so much for being here. Can I please take your car? Any questions I can answer for you? Things like that. And that little bit of conversation really helped instill a sense of purpose in myself and my coworkers. And what seemed like just a basic job of parking cars turned into something of, hey, I'm making a difference in some people's lives, even if it's just making them smile and making them feel welcome as they arrive in this space. And that's something I think that, anybody can do as an empathetic leader, not just in a position of power and authority. I also think empathetic leadership really looks like maybe anticipating things that can go wrong, anticipating some needs, recognizing that assistance. Maybe again, I'm going to use the club president example again. Maybe you're a club president and you know that your treasurer is a finance major and there's a really big finance exam in one of his classes coming up. Maybe that you offer and say, hey, I know in 2 weeks from now you got that really big exam. I know you're probably stressed about it. We also have a big club event that week. What can I take off your plate that would normally fall under your duties? What can I take off your plate to kind of ease your stress levels during a time that might be busier than normal? It's also important to watch for those signs of burnout. We talked about it a little bit earlier, that example of a manager might see you struggling and just not say anything and not care. But an empathetic manager or leader might say, hey, I see you're looking a little sad, a little upset. Maybe you're not performing like normal. How can I help bring you back to a place you want to be? Another really big one, which we'll talk about some more later, is active listening. Has anybody heard of active listening? Is that term familiar to you? When I think about active listening, I really think about you're not seeking to respond, you're seeking to listen and understand. So I think we're all guilty of it sometimes. Sometimes someone telling us something and we're like, ooh, I have a related story there, or I know exactly what I'm going to say. I just need them to finish talking for a second, then I'm going to talk. But an active listening technique would really be sitting there and saying, I'm emptying myself of my own brain, I'm emptying myself of my own experiences, and I'm just simply here to listen and really take that time, digest what's being said, making that effort to be present, making that eye contact, right? Again, think about something you maybe told someone something stressful or something you're worried about, something you're upset about, and they're just like, do, 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 up, I'm on my phone, right? Oh, yeah, that sucks, man. Yeah, yeah, mate, yeah, rough situation. Sorry, buddy. Whereas, again, wow, I can see how that would really affect you. Man, I imagine school has been tougher with this weighing on your mind right now. Is what can I do to help support you through the situation? Things like that. I think that is something that can go ridiculously far. I think another important one, as you'll see in the bottom left here, is understanding different backgrounds. We all come from different places. Especially here at CU Denver. CU Denver is an incredibly diverse campus, both in personal experience, background, race, identity, gender, everything, right? And so we are such an amazing melting pot here at CU Denver, and that means we're coming from such unique places that it's going to inform and shape how we show up, how we learn, how we grow, how we contribute. And I think, by being a leader that takes interest and understands and seeks to understand those backgrounds, not seeks to change folks necessarily, not seek to, hey, you're coming from a background that's not really fitting with the vibe, and I'm going to work hard to change you and kind of break you of bad habits. That's not an empathetic leadership trait. An empathetic leadership trait would say, I am working to understand why your thought process is that way and how your background and your experiences have shaped that mindset. And then I think another, obvious one, right, is just creating an environment that people feel safe in. You want people to feel safe. You want people to feel comfortable. As I mentioned, I work with clubs and orgs, so I've seen some bad club environments before. I've seen some presidents that kind of run their club like a dictatorship, and folks don't feel comfortable. They don't feel safe sharing their opinion. They might see an event and think, "Oh gosh, like we're missing a key factor here," but I'm afraid to speak up because I just don't feel safe and I feel like I'm going to be judged. Or I have a really cool idea, but I don't know. This president doesn't really seem like the type that it seems like they already know what they want to do. So maybe I'll just keep my mouth shut, right? That's not an environment that anybody wants to be in. So empathetic leaders do a really good job of making sure every member, not just the other officers, not the folks that have been a part of the club for a long time, but everybody feels like they can contribute and create something. So let's talk about three reasons empathy is a priority leadership skill. And we're going to look at it now from maybe a work lens or a job lens. I know a lot of folks might be entering the workforce soon, hopefully. Maybe you're already in the workforce. That's amazing. So let's talk about it being a priority skill from a working standpoint. One, as an empathetic leader, empathetic manager, your staff are going to feel more valued. It's been shown, and there's the science backs this up, that it is a significant factor in employee retention. As someone that employs some folks right now and has been a manager for several years now, I can't tell you how much employee retention matters, right? We have several student employees in our office, and we love bringing on new student employees, but we also love bringing back ones that continue to work with us. It is so satisfying to see a student employee in our office come back year after year, continue to grow, continue to develop in this position. It's wonderful to see their personal growth, but it's also wonderful for us because you're not training someone new every 6 months, and we have experts on our team right now that, again, have been working in our office for 3 years, and they're basically, almost on our coordinators levels of their knowledge and understanding and how they're able to contribute. So employee retention matters. A study from Meta found that more than half employees said they would consider resigning if they didn't feel like their leader or their manager was empathetic and didn't show empathy to staff needs. That's more than half people resigning. We're in a crazy time from an employment lens right now. The job market's a little scary, as a lot of you all know. And so turnover is scary, and managers are going to want folks that if you're putting someone in charge of other folks, they're going to want to know that you have these empathetic leadership skills because they don't want to lose those employees that might be working for you. So having that staff value and that employee retention is going to go a long way. Another one, engagement and productivity grow. If you have a team, I mean, it's simple, right? You have a team that's stressed out, doesn't feel safe, doesn't feel comfortable, doesn't feel valued, they're not going to get as much done. If you have a team that feels cared for, understood, listened to, heard, they are going to accomplish some amazing things and they're going to do it at a faster rate. As you see there, when we feel valued, we perform better, period. It impacts job performance, impacts trust rates. It matters. Great Place to Work, which is a company that, they do surveys and stuff like that. They reported that employees that experience higher levels of workplace well-being are 3 times more likely to be engaged at work and more likely to stay, which again goes back to that employee retention. Again, think about a job that you kind of don't care about and don't feel valued. You might just be sitting there scrolling at your phone, looking at nothing. Maybe you're doing your homework, maybe you're not really focused. But a job that you feel engaged in, you might say, I've run out of tasks that have been assigned to me. But because I care about this role and because I care about this team that I'm a part of, I'm going to start brainstorming new ideas and think about process improvements and things like that. So that's the kind of team you want to be on. Member relations, employee relations, these matter, and these are absolutely improved when we're talking about empathetic leadership. It trickles down, right? If we see the CEO, we see the president, we see the dean, whoever, and we see them demonstrating empathetic leadership traits, That's going to rub off on folks and it's going to make its way down the organizational chart. Absolutely. On the flip side, you see someone at a high level that just doesn't seem like they care. Maybe they're just in it for the paycheck. Maybe they feel like they're better than you because they're in a higher level position of you. That also is going to trickle down, right? And that's going to make you feel like, well, if that person doesn't care about me, why should I care about this role? Why should I care about this team? Fostering that sense of mutual understanding, respect, and sensitivity leads to better resilience, better talent retention. So, again, not just in retaining the employees you have, but retaining the high level employees you have, growth in productivity, satisfaction levels, and reduced absenteeism and presenteeism. Meaning, we talked about it a second ago, but there's a difference between showing up to work and showing up to work engaged, right? You might be here, but your brain is somewhere else, or you're scrolling on your phone, or you're not really giving it 100%. Or you're calling out sick a lot when you're not sick. You're just like, yeah, I don't want to go to work, right? I mean, think about it from a class lens. Classes that you really enjoy, let's say you have a professor that doesn't take attendance, but it's a class you really enjoy and your professor makes you feel heard and makes it an engaging environment. You're a lot more likely to want to show up to that class versus I'll be honest, when I was in college, I took some classes where they were like, this class is boring. I just feel like one of 300 people in this room. This professor doesn't care about me. They don't certainly know my name and they have no attendance policy. So maybe I'm going to skip a couple classes, right? That's a perfect example from a workplace perspective or a club leader perspective. You're a club president, and you want your regular members to keep coming back and back. Show that empathetic leadership and make them feel valued. So we've talked a lot. I've kind of thrown some information out to you, but I really want to give you some hard data and some hard facts that are backed up. And I do have the sources page at the end if anybody's interested in where some of this data came from. Empathetic leadership leads to innovation at work. 61%, almost two-thirds of employees with high empathetic senior leadership and 47% with highly empathetic managers were reported to be innovative at work. I mentioned it again or earlier, but new ideas, fresh perspectives. These are the things that if you feel valued and you feel like your leader is an empathetic leader, you're going to start really thinking outside the box and thinking, I love this place. I love this team. I love this job. How can I make it better? Versus, I don't really care about this job. Why would I care about, spending some brain energy making it any better? It boosts engagement at work. 76% of employees with a highly sympathetic senior leader and 67% with highly empathetic managers found to be more often or always engaged at work, right? You're here, you're present, you care. It positively impacts work-life balance. 86% of employees with highly empathetic leaders, 86%, and 82 with highly empathetic managers had better success at balancing personal and professional, right? What can that look like, right? I have a dog. One time my dog got really sick. He had bad reaction to anesthesia. Because I have an empathetic manager, I said, hey, boss, my dog is sick and I really need to take some time away so I can take care of him, right? And make sure he's going to be okay. Thankfully, he is okay. He's sitting right next to me. And because I had that empathetic leader, he didn't say, no, sucks to be you, show up to work or get fired. He said, absolutely, do what you need to do. How can I help you? How can I support you? Are there tasks you're working on that I can possibly take off your plate? And then what's that going to lead to? It's me. I'm going to care more about my job now because I have a manager that I can trust and that cares about me. And I'm going to be more productive at work. And he's going to, even though I might miss a day and a half and have to take some PTO, I'm going to make up that days and a half work, triple over just because I actually care about the role, right? Inclusivity, right? It's a hot topic. It's something we talk about a lot right now is how to make spaces more inclusive. I think that's something we want, right? We want people to feel included and valued in a space. So, where does empathetic leadership tie into inclusivity? 50% of people with highly empathetic leaders experience inclusion at work, meaning they feel valued, they feel safe there, they feel important, they're not being judged for their differences, while only 17% with less sympathetic leaders feel valued. 17% is terrible, right? If you feel like your leader is not empathetic, that's saying that 17% of those folks feel valued and the other 83% do not. That's not good, right? If you have 83% of people in your workplace or in your club or in your group of whatever capacity this looks like and they don't feel valued, they don't feel safe, they don't feel inclusive, that's scary, right? And that's going to lead to all the things we talked about, which is high turnover, high dissatisfaction, absenteeism, all things like that. This is just some data. There's a lot of data out there that talks about the importance, but I wanted to hit you with a couple pieces here. All right, so what does this look like in practice? We've talked a lot about why it matters, and we talked about the data behind why it matters, but I want to spend the next two slides of giving some concrete examples how you as an individual, in whatever situation it is, can practice this empathy. First level, kind of the basic entry level stuff would be starting those small talk conversations. I like to begin all my one-on-ones with just some chit chat. We don't jump right into it. I don't walk in the door and say, "Okay, tell me about what you're working on. Tell me about your projects right now." I say, "How's it going?" "Oh, you mentioned that you were going to this concert the other night. How was that?" "Oh, that sounds really fun." "Oh yeah, I know your mom's coming into town next week. Are you excited? That sounds really cool. What do you got planned for the holidays?" Just those surface level small talk to kind of break the ice, even with someone you know very well, right? It doesn't matter if it's someone you're just now working with or you've worked with for years. That continued small talk and just kind of easing into workload can really help people feel safe, people feel more comfortable. I think, the level two, the next level would be some of those workplace conversations, such as sharing that schedule, saying, "Hey, here's what I've got going on. Here's what my schedule looks like today. I want to give you some updates on what I'm working on and maybe some good and some bad." And if you as a manager are sharing, "Hey, here's what I'm doing well and here's some areas I'm struggling," it allows employees to say, "Ooh, I might be able to help with that. I might be able to contribute." And people just naturally feel more invested in something they helped create, right? So if I share with one of my employees, I oversee our sororities and fraternities, for example, I might say, I'm trying to come up with a good idea for a group service project that all of our orgs can participate in, but I want it to be something they care about and engaging." And one of my coordinators might say, "I have an idea. Why don't we bring it to the SFL Council and let them come up with the idea themselves?" Because again, they're more invested if they have a hand in making it. Then you start to get in the idea sharing, the opinions. "Well, I hear what you're saying, but I have a slightly different opinion, and I hope that's okay." Of course it's okay. An empathetic leader wants to hear different opinions. And I want to hear action plans too. Instead of just saying, "I have a cool idea," in a conversation, here's the action plan of how I'm going to take this into practice. Maybe we start sharing feelings then. This is not everybody feels comfortable doing this, I know, but maybe I start to say, "I'm feeling a little sad because, I'm dealing with a personal emergency and here's what that is and it's affecting me." Or it could be work related, being, "I'm feeling a little undervalued, not by you, my empathetic leader, but maybe by somewhere else at this institution. Maybe I'm working with a campus partner and I just don't feel like that campus partner cares what I have to say and they're kind of trying to steamroll me." If I tell that to my boss, he might be able to, offer me some good insight. And finally, when you feel connected to your feelings and you value those experiences, you value these relationships, you're just going to be more open. You're going to be more honest. You're going to be more vulnerable. And vulnerability and honesty and openness lead to growth. Let's talk about it a little bit more in practice. So, some more quick things. I'm just going to go through these a little quicker. What does it look like in practice? Being an advocate for diversity of thought, which means creating that space where differing opinions and differing ideas are welcome and open. Demonstrating curiosity. "Oh, I'm curious. You mentioned this. I'd really love to kind of know more about your thought process." Or, "You don't seem to like this idea that I have. Can you explain a little more?" Creating safe space and holding space for team members to share their feelings, share their opinions. Understanding team dynamics. We talked about that a lot. Understanding why these two folks might work better together. Maybe these two folks are like, I know I work better in group situations. And so one of my other team members, we like to work in groups and kind of knock out projects together because we can bounce ideas off each other, move quickly, and kind of just be like, "Oh, what do you think of this? Thanks for that. Appreciate this. Ooh, here's an idea." I have other team members that they need to be working silent. They don't need music. They just need to kind of sit at their desk and bang something out, and then they might feel better bring it to the group. So if I maybe pair up someone that likes to work independently with someone that likes to work in a group, they might not be as productive. But if I understand those team dynamics, I can partner people up where they can be the most productive. Emphasis on transparency and communication. That's something I like to do with my employees. I'm going to tell you everything I feel like I'm allowed to tell you. I'm not going to be making decisions and just saying, "Hey, this is why I did this," and I'm not going to tell you the why. No, I'm going to tell you the why because it's going to help you understand that thought process. Not being ashamed to share my own vulnerability. I had some personal things happen in my family this semester that it was kind of tough and it was really hard on me. And I shared that with everyone and said, "Hey, if you ever see me looking like I'm down, just know that this is probably what I'm thinking about." And I think everybody on my team appreciated me being honest and me being vulnerable. Recognizing success. This goes a long way, even if it's something as simple as, "Hey, John, I saw you did a great job on that project. I really was impressed with that." Or, "Hey, Jennifer, that I really think that's a cool idea. I'd love to dive more into that because I've never thought of that. That's a really cool potential for an event we can throw together, right?" Not just understanding people's needs, but respecting them, right? Understanding would be like, "Okay, I understand why you need this time off. Great. No, I really respect that because I can empathize with you and see why you need this time off to go be with your dog because I know how much your dog means to you. And I know that your dog is like your child." And instead of just understanding, yeah, people have dogs, dogs need to be taken care of when they're sick. No, I respect that because I know how much dog means too. Deeply listening. We talk about active listening, where I'm going to talk about an active listening activity here in a second, but really deeply listen without casting judgment. You've seen that TikTok trend that's like we listen and we don't judge, right? Think about that. I'm listening. I'm not listening to judge. I'm listening to understand. And just treat people with respect, right? It's very, very straightforward. These are all great ways to kind of practice that empathy. So, quickly, let's talk about some things maybe we get wrong about empathetic leadership. Some folks think they have a good sense of what empathetic leadership means and what that looks like, but let's talk just quickly about what that might look like when we get it wrong. We talked about it briefly before, but people do confuse sympathy and empathy a lot. And I understand it. They sound similar. They're often used interchangeably. They're often used wrongly. But sympathy is more about feeling sorrow because and then it's like, oh, I feel bad for you that you broke your leg, versus like, oh my gosh, I understand that breaking your leg is going to lead to all these other things going to be wrong. We work in a multi-generational and multicultural organizations now. We talked about how diversity Denver is, but also the workforce is getting diverse. Gen Z, as many of you are making your way into the workforce. We have a lot of clashing of ideas with, the boomer generation, the Gen Zers, the millennials like me, the Gen Xers. It's just a very different work dynamic. And you can't, view it all as one conglomerate unit, right? So you can't expect people to relate to every circumstance, right? And that's just reality, right? Maybe you're talking to your boomer boss and you're talking about some drama that you're having with your friend. Maybe the drama involves social media and they're just not as in tune with social media, right? Doesn't mean that they don't care, but it is important to recognize that sometimes there are generational gaps or things that just they might not be there. Doesn't mean you shouldn't feel safe talking, and doesn't mean that you as a leader shouldn't do the same. Maybe you're supervising someone that's a lot younger, a lot older, or comes from a different background. You can tell them, hey, I can't imagine what that feels like because I don't come from that background. That being said, I am so sorry, and I can definitely see why this is causing a negative impact. Empathy is really about showing compassion for another person without personally relating. It doesn't have to be something you've experienced. I don't have to have broken my leg or broken a bone to understand how bad breaking your leg is going to impact your day to day. So you can still respect their feelings, their thoughts, and be that listening ear without having to personally understand or have experienced it yourself. So this is an activity I encourage you all to do with your group. Again, it could be a workplace, clubs and orgs, whatever that might be. But one activity I like to do is practice that active listening we talked about earlier. So what that looks like is you partner up. It could be a group of three, but ideally kind of one-on-one. And one person, let's say person A, takes you can determine the time yourself, 2, 3 minutes, whatever that might be, to share something that they're dealing with right now. Could be a positive thing, could be a negative thing, could be something you're stressed about, but they take 2 to 3 uninterrupted minutes and they just talk. I am dealing with my dog being sick. Don't worry, he's all better now. But let's say he was sick again. I'm dealing with my dog being sick, and I'm really going to just kind of stream of consciousness tell you how this is making me feel and why this has been so tough on me, right? And the other person, the person B, is just going to sit there and active listen. They're going to listen to understand, not to judge, not to jump in and say, "Oh, my dog was sick once too. Let me tell you about my story." No, it's not about your story right now. It's about person A's dog that's sick. And then what you can do after that 3 minutes is up is say, "Thank you, person A, for sharing that. What I heard from you is this. I can only imagine how difficult this may be. Are there things I can do for you? Are there resources I can provide? What can I do to make this situation with your dog easier?" And then switch, right? Person B tells the story, person A active listens. This is a really great way to practice because I know it seems easy, but even I do it all the time too. Sometimes I find myself kind of sitting on my hands back and forth, like, oh, I want to say something here. I want to say something, but it's not my turn to speak. It's my turn to listen. So really cool activity I've done with clubs and orgs. I've done with people in my own office. It's something I highly encourage trying. So we're almost done here. Let's just look at some key takeaways before we wrap up this presentation. Practice active listening every day. This is not a skill that you do at one time, you've nailed it, it's over. This is something that you should be practicing every day in every interaction, especially if you are in a position of leadership. 2, you got to build trust. Building trust is honestly step 1. You can build trust by active listening. That's a great way to show that you care and build that trust with your team. But building trust is crucial, and it's going to lead to a cascading effect of other positivity in the workplace. Make the time for folks, right? When some of us are in positions of power or leadership, maybe we're the manager, team lead, etc., we have to recognize that in our position, we might be working a little more hours, we might be working a little bit. And so like I might be so relaxed on my couch watching TV, but if one of my team members texts me and says, "Hey, I really need to talk. I got something going on." It's my duty as a manager to say, sure, pause my Netflix show and take that time to listen to them. Because what that does is it shows them that I care. It shows them that I value them and their experiences, whether it's personal, work related, whatever. Not just, oh, I'm off the clock, figure it out, or we'll talk about it on Monday or something like that. Two, we talked about this a little bit, but it's okay to not have the answers, right? You don't have to understand truly what everyone's going through. But why, by doing this active listening of it being an empathetic leader, you're seeking to understand, right? So maybe you do. Maybe you're like, man, I went through that same thing and here's some techniques I used, but maybe you didn't. And so I want to understand more about how this is impacting you. I know you're going through this personal issue right now. I really want to understand. Can you tell me more about this? Can you tell me how I can help? Because I don't have the answers, but maybe by talking it out a little bit, we can come up with some answers together. There is no one size fits all approach. Empathetic leadership is not just a checklist where you enter a meeting and say, I did this, I did this, I did this. Great meeting, right? It's going to take some fine tuning. It's going to take knowing your team. We talked about the importance of understanding your team members as individuals instead of just like, oh, everybody in this position, all assistant directors are the same. No, Addison is different than Kelsey. You might be watching Kelsey's video, or you might have already watched Kelsey's video. She's on our team too. My boss can't treat Kelsey and I the exact same and give us the exact same approach because we have different styles. I might want different things than Kelsey wants from our supervisor, right? And so just recognizing there's not a one size approach. And then try to give folks the same grace you would give your own team, right? And what I mean by that is, let's say you're interacting with someone you don't know as well. Give them the same grace and the same understanding and the same patience that you would one of your close friends or a team member you've worked with a long time that you're like, okay, this person's upset. John is upset or John's not performing. I'm going to give him some grace because I know John. He's a hard worker. He never lets me down. And I'm just gonna have a conversation with them and say, "Hey, John, what's up, man? Let's talk. What's going on?" Try to give that same grace to people you don't know. If you're in these positions of power, you might have a new team members joining. You might have new club members joining. You might be hiring new folks eventually as you make your way into the workplace. Give those same folks that same grace that you would give someone you know in a long time, because what that is telling him like, "Wow, I don't really know Addison very well. I just started with him," or "I don't know Addison at all. I'm just a random person that walked into the student life office and had a question." But he showed me true kindness and understanding, and that made me feel welcome. And now I feel safe going back to the student life office, and I feel like that's a good resource for me. This is just a couple key takeaways that I want you to really think about as we exit this presentation. I'm going to hover on this page for a second. Feel free to take a screenshot, pause the video. Obviously, this is a video, so pause it. These are just some great websites I found, but there is a lot of information out there about empathetic leadership. So if you're interested in learning more and you want to kind of dive deeper into the concept of it, maybe you want to hear about some activities or things you can practice, whether it's yourself or as a team, feel free to reach out to me. Do some research on Google. There is so much great stuff about empathetic leadership. And with that, I'm going to pause my screen. I hope you all enjoyed this presentation. I don't claim to be an expert on this, so if you want to dive more, or if you have thoughts or ideas or opinions on this, I would love to talk more about empathetic leadership. If you have a club that you would like me to come talk more about this and maybe do this with your club or with your club officers, just let us know. I hope this was helpful, and I really appreciate you all. If you have any questions at all, stop by our office, Tivoli 303, email us at studentlife@ucdenver.edu. We look forward to hearing from you. Best of luck. Thanks, everyone.